Thank you, SACNAS, for the invitation to be here with everyone today. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I'm a member of the Crow tribe in Montana and the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikarathri-affiliated tribes in North Dakota. Both of my tribes' homelands contain vast natural resources, and my homelands have been the focus of my research since beginning graduate school. I left home at a very young age. At 14, I attended a boarding school on the East Coast. I knew I wanted to go to college eventually, and that I needed to get as much preparation as I could to do so. I took the flight into Boston by myself, and a kind school employee picked me up, and I stayed at her home before going to the school for the first time. I learned more about all the rest of the world away from home, and by the time I started college, making that journey to campus by myself was something that I didn't think about. And now that I'm a parent, that's something that I really see myself doing. So when I'm asked where I am from, I say Montana. I'm a landowner here, and the majority of my family still lives where I grew up. The next comment is usually comparing wherever we are to Montana, and I usually have to say, no, I didn't come directly from there. I've lived many other places, including both coasts, since coming from there, that are likely similar to the present community that we're in. So on the slides, I wanted to include photos of my fieldwork sites. These are remote places that I otherwise would not have visited. And to arrive at the locations, I followed maps, points documented by old descriptions before GPS locations were used, so traditional land descriptions to find these points. So my process includes researching land patents to know who was the first land title holder. And I needed to know the history of the land to determine how it would be impacted. I love that my research brings me to remote places. However, I'm often accompanied by a research assistant, which usually includes my husband. Earlier, it was my nieces, and someday in the future will likely include my daughter. This picture shows one of the landscapes that we happened upon after taking a winding dirt route up to this shelf of the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. And I wanted to include in the photo a person who is actually my husband, to appreciate the people who helped me get where we are visiting and completing our work. And having company on my trips is essential, and having assistance in the field is always welcome, especially when there's no cell service and the only reception being the AM radio, filling in the soundtrack of the drive. We meet many of our wildlife relatives, herds of antelope, deer, prairie dogs in their towns. And in this photo, we happen to see a huge eagle that was near a oil and gas facility that I was sampling. In the rare event, we come across people. Oddly, most people are friendly, given they otherwise would know everyone in that community. But in this line of work, I do meticulous research to know exactly which land parcels to access and plan out a route that is accessible. My fieldwork usually directs our summer travel and are the only time I'm able to return to my homelands each year. This was very much the case during my doctoral and postdoctoral careers when I had significantly less resources. I really do look back and wonder how I was able to piece together resources and fund my research trips. I had a postdoctoral fellowship that covered my salary but did not include research funds. So as a professor, I like to give advice. So here's a tip. Make sure that you look for research fellowships that include allocations for research, particularly if you plan to work on your own project. This was my intention, especially with my work being on tribal land. I also suggest trying to identify additional professional development funds to attend conferences, such as this amazing gathering. By the time I was a postdoc, I'd become very resourceful and kept an eye out for opportunities to fund conferences or just ask for assistance. For example, from the postdoc affairs office at the university that I attended. And they did give me that assistance. And often there is money to be scrounged up at these universities. If nothing else, in my educational journey, I had learned to hustle, and that's what helped me to get by. I did not ask my own advisors, neither had funded me, and never did offer assistance. I often think about what kind of advisor I want to be. Reflecting on this, I already think that I'm light years ahead of giving assistance and guidance to my own students than was shown to me. But that also may be due to the other factors at the time, like being in large lab groups with more established professors who by that point were generally more hands-off. Also in graduate school, I was an older student, but I was for sure the only researcher working on tribal lands and with tribal communities. Now all of my advisees are working within tribal communities and are addressing environmental issues through an Indigenous lens. I foresee the challenges that will likely present themselves for my students completing this work, be it administration, lack of data, and even their own program and advisors for students outside of my lab. I was lucky to have a few key allies in grad school that probably do not know the extent that their assistance helped me at critical points when I was in survival mode during graduate school. My work out in the lands and that preparation was my happy place. When traveling out to these locations, I felt that these are sacred places, even though the reason I was visiting them is because they have vast mineral resources and are at various phases of being developed. This is a location in North Dakota where I worked for the tribal government for a period of time, and also the land that my family has their homestead. I often find myself imagining checking in on my past research sites, wondering how the season has changed the landscape in that particular time of year. We have to be the witness for the land. The data that we collect is our testimony of how it should remain intact. Our science is our advocacy. At this point in my career, I'm thinking I find myself on an accelerated learning curve to fill in the holes of being an academic that I'm realizing I did not receive in my training as a scholar. I haven't found any way to magically remove these same barriers that students with my experience will find. I think I've just realized how deeply embedded contributing factors are with the perspective of being a faculty member. My priorities have also significantly changed since I've had a child while on the tenure track. I'm even more impressed with my colleagues that were parents in graduate school. I'm continually thankful for those mentors that I can vent to, but I know will keep me focused on my priorities. The primary one, preparing for tenure. At the end of the day, I'm working on projects that are important to me and to my advisees. My advisees eventually will still need to know how to hustle, but also be able to continue their hard work through visiting and protecting their own sacred spaces. Thank you.